all remember 2008. The stock market crashed, foreclosures spiked, and the banks got a bailout. But can you think of a single Wall Street big shot or hedge fund honcho who was punished as a result? The fact is, no one was. In his new book, The Divide, investigative journalist and author Matt Taibbi explains this strange set of circumstances. Poverty goes up, crime goes down, the prison population doubles. Fraud by the rich wipes out 40% of the world's wealth. The rich get massively richer. No one goes to jail. And Matt Taibbi is here. Welcome, Matt.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's great. You really immersed yourself in this. It was just amazing to go back and look at all those instances of these giant corporations and banks spending $800 billion worth of, or getting out bad mortgages. Not a single person.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the first real prosecution of anybody related to any of the crimes leading up to the 2008 crisis. There was some news released this week that maybe they're considering going after a couple of banks, but we're still waiting.
Yeah, I mean, you start in the book, they went after a couple of really small, petty ante ones, but they never went after the big ones. And why was that?
Well, there's a variety of factors, and some of them actually make quite a lot of sense. The excuses they often give are that if they were to pursue criminal cases against some of these too big to fail institutions, it may have what they call market-altering consequences. We saw what happened in 2008 when a company like Lehman Brothers collapsed. It set off a chain reaction of losses all around the world, and so there's almost like this butterfly effect theory of criminal justice now, where we're afraid if we prosecute over here, we just don't know what will happen over here in the rest of the world. And so that's become part of the rationale. There's also the fear of going up against a very well-defended company. There's the fact that these cases are complex and juries don't understand them. But, I mean, I think all of these excuses fall short. I still think we owe it to the people to at least try to try to make some of these cases. When there's corruption that's going on, we can't just let it go and let them write a check and get away.
That's what's happening, though. They're writing checks. They're being fined. They're still in business. They're still making billions of dollars. So the check is nothing.
Right. And that's what we're doing. We're creating. We're openly talking about this class of offender, which we call the too big to jail class, and we know that this type of offender will ultimately get away with a fine that he or she will not pay out of his or her own pocket. It will come out of the shareholders' pockets, and this is distinct from the ordinary person who risks jail time when he or she commits a crime. And so we now have this arrestable class and a non-arrestable class, and I don't think that's the way it's supposed to work in this country. I think we're all supposed to risk the same penalties for the same crimes.
I was fascinated by what you did on the flip side of this, which was to discover people who were just everyday minor league petty thieves or street thugs who were swept up into the criminal justice system largely by being just a number, because they needed and so the population in prison has swelled to double what it was 10 years ago even. Crime is way down, and yet all of these people are swirling around in the system.
Yes, we have all these paradoxical numbers that are now becoming part of our culture. Violent crime has decreased by 44% since 1990, but the prison population has doubled since that time. It's gone from about 1 million people to 2.2 million people. Even worse than that, it's actually quadrupled since 1980. So we've had this exploding. If you look at the graph for the prison population, it goes like this, and then there's a steep arc that continues to go upward. And there's no real explanation for it because, again, crime is going down. Even though poverty is going up and we're having more economic hardship, we would expect to see more property crimes, more crimes of desperation, but that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is just more arrests and more people going to jail, but less crime, which is a very strange thing.
I was really disturbed by those chapters because it seemed, the police were acting like armed forces, sweeping people for the most basic. I mean, some of them were drug dealers, but very low-level stuff.
Of course, and this was a subtext of the whole book for me. I had been covering Wall Street for years, so I was familiar with the whole phenomenon of the white-collar offender who gets away with a fine or a slap on the wrist. But I didn't know a whole lot as a citizen or as a journalist about how the other side of the coin works. And I was shocked to find out things like, if you're a single mom on welfare and you get caught up in a welfare fraud case, or if you're an undocumented immigrant and you get in a car accident, you may never see your kids again. You may never see your husband again. I mean, there are these incredible draconian consequences for ordinary people who get caught up for these little tiny crimes. And then you think about that juxtaposed to these billion-dollar frauds that went on, and not only are people not prosecuted, but they're allowed to keep, 80–90% of their ill-gotten gains. It's an incredible contrast.
Oh my gosh! And the contrast in the book, I mean, it's called The Divide for a reason. You feel like you're jumping between these two worlds of this great privileged masses of the kind of wealth that none of us can really imagine, and then into the gutters of Rikers Island, for people being swept up for blocking traffic.
Right. Yeah. I met a person in New York, and this turned out to be not all that uncommon an offense. But I met a 35-year-old African American bus driver who was stopped, and now he had a record. I mean, he had in his youth he had been involved in the game a little bit, but he had grown up. He had kids. He was a family man. He was working. He was wearing a tie. He comes home. The police, and this is part of the statistics-based policing strategy, is to sort of sweep everybody up. They're looking for warrants. They're looking for guns. They're looking for drugs. If they don't find them, theoretically they throw everybody back. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And this particular individual ended up getting charged with obstructing pedestrian traffic. And we see offenses like this over and over again. In that case, there was nobody else in the street to obstruct, but they charged him anyway. Refusal to obey a lawful police order is another very common one. The officer tells the person to move, he doesn't, he gets arrested. Carrying an open container, it's all stuff like this, and it's in New York. It's 600,000 cases a year.
Very, very disturbing. All right, it's a great book. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
Matt Taibbi, thank you.